Legacy Precious Metals is the company that I trust to give you good and patient counsel for investing in your retirement. The Biden administration has caused a financial crisis, and they have no clue how to fix it. Oil prices have skyrocketed, and when oil prices go up, not only do your expenses go up, but the cost of transportation and shipping spikes, leading the prices of goods to rise. And we are already seeing record inflation. That's the last thing that we need. Our economy is in trouble, and you need to take steps to protect yourself. If all your money is tied up in stocks, bonds, and traditional markets, you may be vulnerable. So gold is one of the very best ways to protect your retirement. No matter what happens, you own your own gold. It's real, it's physical, and it's always been valuable since the dawn of time. Call Legacy Precious Metals today at 866-528-1903 or visit them online at legacypminvestments.com. That's legacypminvestments.com, where you can download the free investor's guide. You can also go to my Facebook page, Jenna Ellis. I am a public figure on Facebook, and I just posted yesterday a really great interview with the president of Legacy Precious Metals, who is discussing why you need to start your retirement account even if you're in your 20s or 30s. There is always a great time to protect your retirement and invest, just like you want to protect your health over the long term. So go to Legacy Precious Metals at legacypminvestments.com or call 866-528-1903.
As a constitutional law attorney, former senior legal advisor, and personal counsel to President Donald J. Trump, Jenna Ellis believes in the rule of law and the importance of integrity in our elections. And she's ready to tackle the big cultural and legal issues facing America. This is the Jenna Ellis Show. Here is your host, Jenna Ellis.
Happy Thursday, friends, and welcome to another episode of the Jenna Ellis Show. I'm Jenna Ellis, and we have been talking so much about gun control lately. And of course, after a terrible event, a tragic event like the mass shooting that happened at a school in Texas, the left and the right always talk about the Second Amendment, they talk about gun control, and they tend to focus our attention on guns and on our liberties and freedoms instead of focusing on why the perpetrator acted the way that he did. And so rather than always being defensive as conservatives and Christians about our Second Amendment protections and about our right to keep and bear arms, why aren't we on the offensive to say, wait a minute, maybe we need to address mental health issues, maybe we need to address fatherlessness, maybe we need to address why we are raising a generation of young men that can go into schools and perpetuate this type of evil. So there is no better person to talk about these issues than my very good friend, Dr. Tim Clinton, who is the executive director and founder of the American Association of Christian Counselors and an expert in the area of mental health. So Dr. Tim, thank you so much for joining me again today.
Hi, Jenna. Great to be with you.
Yeah, so this whole issue of mental health and fatherlessness and why we're raising a generation that doesn't value life, what is going on in our culture that we're seeing this type of atrocity?
You know, Jenna, when this whole situation broke on the news streams out there, my mind immediately went to what in the world's going on? What kind of darkness is going on in the mind of that young man that would take him into a classroom with 7, 8, 9, 10-year-old kids and begin just to shoot them up? I mean, you've got to be in a really, really dark, nasty place to let that happen. And so in my world, when I'd step back from that, I'm thinking, boy, oh boy, wonder not what's wrong with this kid, what happened to this kid is a lot of how we approach these kind of situations. What in the world has he been through? What took him to this place? At the end of the day, we know it's evil, period. This is evil. But Jenna, there's a lot of factors that feed into this situation, stuff that we need to be talking about, stuff that should be at the forefront of everything that's going on as we try to understand what's happening in this crazy culture that we're in.
Yeah, and that's so well said. And so why isn't our culture and especially the politicians out there, why aren't they addressing more of the mental health aspects and the worldview aspects of what we're teaching our kids and the culture that we're raising them in, when we're teaching them that, oh, a fetus is just a lump of cells. And we saw this TikTok video from a woman who has a newborn child in her arms saying, I could have aborted you, but I chose to give you life. I mean, it's so disgusting that we're teaching our young children that if the adults don't value life, why should they?
Yeah, it's a narrative issue, Jenna. You know that it doesn't fit the narrative, so we're going to stay away from that stuff. That's not going to make the buzz and what we're trying to accomplish. Jenna, you step back from it, just for a moment. You mentioned the word fatherlessness. At the end of the day, I don't know if people understand this. Most Americans, an overwhelming majority of Americans, believe the greatest social ill of our day is fatherlessness. I'll add godly fathers, the absence of godly fathers in the home. When you see the research that shows how important, how significant a dad is, I mean, it's profound, it's overwhelming. I mean, when dads are physically and emotionally present in the life of his son or daughter, it's a game changer. They do better on every index of, quote, well being, if you will. They score higher academically. They're much more secure in their male and female identities. They're less given to drug abuse, substance use, so much more. Less given. They don't struggle with mental health issues as much because the gift of a father is amazing. But then again, Jenna, at the end of the day, in this culture, it's all about toxic masculinity. Males are bad, that, and they need that narrative out there. But nothing could be further from the truth. And so when you look at these kind of situations, I immediately go back and say, what in the world is going on? What happened here? Because simple things like a gift of a dad, one of the greatest gifts a dad gives to his kids is the ability to have empathy. It's a core skill taught primarily through a dad, how to look through the eyes of another person. When Zach was little, I used to hold him down, Jenna. We'd wrestle and I'd lock him up in a bear hug and give him a little Dutch rope for a moment and learn to teach him to calm himself in that kind of a situation. Learning emotion regulation. Those are skills, those are gifts that come in the context of a family. When you grow up in a fatherless home, who's going to teach these things? Who's going to teach boys, young men? I mean, the theme here, the narrative in all these school shootings are young men who are primarily doing this stuff. Who's teaching them? What's happened to us? And why aren't we even talking about it?
Right. And, you mentioned toxic masculinity, which, of course, is the left's primary narrative that we need to remove all male presence from our lives and from the household and from the family. And if that were true, then the data would trend that the children who grow up without fathers would be the most well balanced, happy, normal people in the world. But we see that the data that you just expressed is exactly the opposite. And so, what is the Christian response to this false narrative? And how can we encourage the family to thrive against this counterculture narrative?
Well, the church's response to this ought to be what James talked about, and that is to visit the widows and the orphans in their affliction. And at the end of the day, Jenna, we need the church to step up into this moment. We need great mentoring programs. There are good programs out there like John Smith Baker's program, Fathers in the Field. A buddy of mine, TJ Greeny, out of Texas, has got a nice mentoring program for boys and more. People who will step up and teach them these basic skills. I applaud all the moms out there, the single parent moms who try to be mom and dad. But at the end of the day, that's not her role. That's not her responsibility. We need to get godly male influence in the lives of these kids. And hey, we ought to be able to look anywhere for that kind of influence. Get a brother. Get your dad. Get grandpa. Get a youth pastor. Get some type of youth mentor in their life. Do something. You know why? Because at the end of the day, it matters. That's why.
Mm-hmm. It does. It absolutely does. And, my dad has had such a profound and significant influence in my life. And when you were describing, how you have interacted with your son, Zach, and of course your daughter as well. And your family is just so wonderful and beautiful. And my family, my parents have invested in me and my brothers in the same way, all growing up and even as adults. I mean, my dad's presence in my life and his continued mentorship is significant. And I would not be the person I am today without his influence, his instruction, and him being a father in my life. And as you said, the church needs to step up for those families where children don't have a father that's present. The church does need to provide that male headship, that mentorship, and that discipleship. And when we look at the culture, and we're stepping in, of course, to Pride Month, according to the left. This is June, where we're seeing all of these rainbow flags and all of this merchandise and all of this, crazy false narrative. And it reminds me of the other factor here of mental health that we want to talk about. And when we look at what we're teaching our young people as well, in terms of, they can just choose their own identity. They can choose to be gender fluid. They don't have any real identity. It's just whatever they want to make into reality. How should the church address this moving forward? And how does this play into mental health concerns that we're seeing in culture?
Jenna, I'd put it this way. We're losing our boys. We're losing a generation of boys. And this is desperate. And these kids are growing up in a culture that's absolute chaos. But you mentioned all those issues. Let me add a few things to the table. Pornography. Just think about the porn pandemic, the porndemic they're calling it now. Pornhub is just soaring, but the average age of viewing that stuff, or the number one consumer, 11 to 17-year-old boys. At first viewing down to the age 5, 6 years of age. These kids are seeing stuff up online that's it's of another world. It's horror. Throw into that gaming, how much time we're spending up on these gaming devices and more. We're not sitting around the dinner table anymore. We're not teaching simple, basic truths about life. We're not invested in each other. We're not saying to each other, you're important. We're finding, Jenna, it's hard to get parents to spend 20 minutes a day in command-free special time with kids, trying to make relationship work. At the end of the day, as a parent, you know this, the quality of your relationship even determines the effectiveness of your discipline strategies. What's happening is a decimation of the family. So goes the family, so goes the church, so goes the nation. You know that?
Mm-hmm.
At the end of the day, stepping back and realizing everything we're up against, this should challenge us to pressing closer. It's like, Jenna, when a traumatic event, when you experience a traumatic event, what it does is it destroys your sense of safety. It makes you feel like you're walking around on eggshells. You're on hyper alert all the time. Think about those kids who witnessed all this stuff and what they're going through right now and what their moms and dads are trying to do to bring some stability and sameness back into their life. We talk about making sure you're spending time together, making sure you're reaching out and touching your kids, letting them know you're close. Proximity is important. Talk to them age appropriately. Hey, do whatever it takes to get into their world quickly, because at the end of the day, it's all about truth. You know what? There are bad guys out there, but there are good guys. All that stuff comes together, and it comes from a special place. It comes from the home. Moms and dad who loves little kids, you know that? Whose lives are out of control, who need them to be parents. That's why we call it parenting. Somebody's the adult here. Somebody has to speak up and say, this is the way, walk ye in it. And as we press into God's way and we understand what He is teaching us about basic fundamental principles of life, that brings a constant, that brings stability. That's what we need in this big bad world that we're living in. That's what our kids need. Kids want structure. They want you to tell them what to do and not do. They do. They can regulate their world around it. Are they going to push against it? Of course they are. They're going to push as far as they can to see where you're at and what really matters, what's important. I go back. That's what parenting's all about. God help us.
Yes, yes. And God help parents and God help the church. And parenting, like you said, is so incredibly important. And parents need to look at themselves as the mentors and the disciples of, the mentors and their children as the disciples. Because if parents only see their children as these obnoxious just kids that, okay, go play or go be entertained, or we have to find other programs and schools and events and things for you to be involved in, they're actually letting other people determine the worldview and what their children are thinking. And so, with this whole Disney controversy as well, and like when you're looking at what is going on programming on television and in schools with, drag queen story time and all of these other things, then the responsibility of parents should be, I'm not going to expose my child to that. It's not incumbent upon parents to depend on the government to say, we want the government to restrain a corporation from putting out this material. No, we're going to take it upon ourselves to not expose our children to that material. If your child knows more about the worldview of Mickey Mouse than he or she does about Jesus Christ and the biblical worldview, that's on the parent. That's not on government. And so you're absolutely right, Dr. Tim, that we have to make sure that parents are taking the responsibility to train up children in the way that they should go, because as Proverbs says, then when they're older, they won't depart from it. And we are seeing an absolute disaster of the breakdown of the family in society. So how can church and how can others in the community come alongside parents and continue to encourage this when, some parents would say, well, we just go along, go with the flow, and we're told to put our kids in school, so we do. We're told to just give them tablets, so we do. And, they can watch whatever they want. What are resources for parents? Where can they start?
Well, you know that I co-host now with Dr. James Dobson, Family Talk. And Family Talk, drjamesdobson.org. Doc has a lot of resources up there to help strengthen the family, how to raise boys, how to raise girls, and so much more. So there's a wealth of resources there. But let me take you back to the scriptures. Let me say something about dads for a moment, because I think we need to get this right. Ephesians 6:4 says, dads, don't provoke your kids to wrath. I often wonder, Jenna, why is that verse in the Bible? And it's there for a reason. You know what the reason is? Because as a dad, you can hurt your kids. You can. So dads, be tender to them. Be attuned to them. I'll go back to that verse you just quoted out of Proverbs. Train up a child in the way he should go, and when he's old, he won't depart from it. There are two ways to understand that. One is train up the child in the way he should go. In his natural bent, being attuned to the uniqueness of that child. We need to do that as parents. We need to understand that our kids are different. You don't love your kids the same way. They're different. They give and receive love differently. You need to be attuned to each child specifically. And then also, in the way he should go, can be interpreted this way. In the ways of the Lord. What is right and what is wrong? At the end of the day, there is a standard. Even the left, even though they're cascading off the cliff, somebody's going to have to put a stake in the ground and say, no, you know what? Minor attractive people are not okay. You know that? Well, who determined that? Somewhere you learn that there is a standard of truth in this life, and you have to, quote, follow in those ways and teach those principles. Then you'll be blessed in this thing called life. And when you have a relationship with God in Christ, when you realize that He loves you like mom and dad should love me, with their arms around me, there's freedom in that, Jenna. There's a gift in that. And ultimately, it's that gift of what? Having a meaningful relationship with God for eternity. That's what I love. You know that, and unashamedly, that's the gift I want to make sure my kids know about, and that they grow up in that, and that they hold tenaciously and fight tenaciously for that very thing, for their children and their children's children. That's what this is all about.
Absolutely. And that's what gives us true and genuine courage and the ability to be secure in our identity, is when we truly understand that we are safe in the love of Christ. And that love should be felt first in the home with parents who then share Christ with their kids. And I know that your children and now your grandchildren are so blessed to have a loving home. My parents have given that to me and have given me such a solid foundation that then I could grow in the grace and knowledge and love of Christ. And that's ultimately what we need to share to the world and to this very lost and broken culture. And so, Dr. Tim, thank you so much for joining me today, and for all the work that you do with AACC and also with our friend Dr. James Dobson. And where can people find more resources from you and listen to all of your work? And also, if they are interested in biblical counseling, because I know you have such a wealth and a great network of counselors that can help parents as well.
Jenna, I have a new book out called Focus on the Future, Why Your Faith, Your Family, and the Future Matter More Now Than Ever. Jenna, you can learn more about that and resources at timclinton.com or aacc.net, aacc.net.
Great. Well, thank you so much. And remember, everyone, to subscribe to the Jenna Ellis Show so that you can view all of the latest episodes as soon as they drop. So if you're watching this on Rumble, go ahead and click subscribe. If you are listening on any of our audio channels, click subscribe to your favorite podcast streaming service. And I will see you soon. Legacy Precious Metals is the company that I trust to give you good and patient counsel for investing in your retirement. The Biden administration has caused a financial crisis, and they have no clue how to fix it. Oil prices have skyrocketed, and when oil prices go up, not only do your expenses go up, but the cost of transportation and shipping spikes, leading the prices of goods to rise. And we are already seeing record inflation. That's the last thing that we need. Our economy is in trouble, and you need to take steps to protect yourself. If all your money is tied up in stocks, bonds, and traditional markets, you may be vulnerable. So gold is one of the very best ways to protect your retirement. No matter what happens, you own your own gold. It's real, it's physical, and it's always been valuable since the dawn of time. Call Legacy Precious Metals today at 866-528-1903 or visit them online at legacypminvestments.com. That's legacypminvestments.com, where you can download the free investor's guide. You can also go to my Facebook page, Jenna Ellis. I am a public figure on Facebook, and I just posted yesterday a really great interview with the president of Legacy Precious Metals, who is discussing why you need to start your retirement account even if you're in your 20s or 30s. There is always a great time to protect your retirement and invest, just like you want to protect your health over the long term. So go to Legacy Precious Metals at legacypminvestments.com or call 866-528-1903. I also want to talk about another great American who is the sponsor of this podcast, and that, of course, is my good friend Mike Lindell. He has been canceled out of so many box stores for simply standing up for his own political opinion. And disagree or not, or support him or not, it is a fundamental right of every American to be able to voice their opinion, and that absolutely includes politics. That absolutely includes issues that are central to our culture. That includes faith. Mike is such a very sincere Christian, and I am proud to consider him a friend, and he is, of course, a friend of this show. So right now, there is a special on MyPillow.com. Click on the new radio listener specials. Get deep discounts on all MyPillow products, including a great towel set, which is a 6-piece set. It includes 2 bath, 2 hand towels, 2 washcloths, made in the USA, regularly $109.99, now just $39.99, but you have to use the promo code Jenna. That's Jenna. That tells Mike that you listen to this show, you're happy that he is a sponsor of this show, and you will get great discounts, but use the promo code Jenna. That's Jenna, either at mypillow.com or call 1-800-564-8475 and use the promo code Jenna.